He had the right papers. He had the right visa. He was named the best referee on an entire continent in 2025. He had worked his way through the ranks of African football officiating for 8 years to reach the moment that every official at every level of the game spends their career dreaming of, a World Cup. He had refereed a continental final. He had officiated at the Africa Cup of Nations. He had been selected by FIFA from the entire global pool of officials as one of 52 referees trusted to manage matches at the biggest sporting tournament on Earth. And he flew to Miami on the 6th of June, 6 days before the opening match, carrying all of that with him. What happened next lasted 11 hours. 11 hours of questioning at Miami International Airport. Questions that, according to his own account, focused heavily on Al-Shabaab, the militant group operating in parts of Somalia, the country where Omar Abdul Qadir Artan was born in 1992, the country he had represented with distinction across a decade of football officiating, the country that had nothing to do with why he was standing in an airport corridor, being asked to account for himself to border officials who had no reason to doubt him beyond the passport in his hand. He showed them his FIFA documentation. He showed them proof of his career. He answered their questions for 11 hours. Then they put him in a holding cell. Then they put him on a flight back to Istanbul. He spoke afterwards. His words were quiet, and they were devastating. He said he was very, very disappointed. He said he was simply a referee trying to live his dream, the biggest dream of his life, to come to the World Cup. He said he had the right papers and everything. He had the right visa. None of it mattered. He was determined to be inadmissible due to vetting concerns. No reason was given. Somalia is one of 39 countries subject to travel restrictions. That was enough. FIFA confirmed he would not officiate at the 2026 World Cup. The governing body said it was not involved in host country immigration processes. It said a host government ultimately determines who receives a visa and who is admitted into their country. It said his status would not be changed at present. And in a question that has circulated widely since the story broke, nobody has yet provided a satisfactory answer. Why did FIFA not reassign Omar Artan to matches in Canada or Mexico, where neither country had any reason to bar him? Why does a governing body that is not involved in host country immigration processes not have a contingency for exactly this kind of situation? He was Africa's Referee of the Year. He had refereed the CAF Champions League final. He was the first Somali ever to officiate at a continental final, and he spent 11 hours in an airport corridor being questioned about a terrorist organization, then flew home. This happened the day before the World Cup began, the 10th of June. Tomorrow, as of when this story broke, the Azteca in Mexico City would host the opening match, and on the 9th of June, Omar Artan was on a flight back to Istanbul with nothing to show for 8 years of work except the dignity he carried with him when he spoke. That dignity was real and it was visible, and it made everything around it look considerably worse. So what's really happening here? Because the Omar Artan story, as extraordinary as it is in isolation, is the distillation of something that has been building around this tournament for months. It is the single most concentrated expression of the gap between what the World Cup promises and what the conditions surrounding it have delivered. And to understand it fully, you need to set it alongside everything else that has been happening. The Iran ticket situation that broke on the same day, the contrast with what Canada and Mexico have been building, and the specific human story of what it looks and feels like to arrive at a World Cup as a nation that is genuinely, unconditionally ready for the world. Let's start there, because Canada's story in this tournament deserves to be told with the specificity it has earned. Toronto is home to 200 nationalities. That is not promotional language. It is a documented fact about the composition of the city. More than 200 nationalities represented in a single urban area. Football communities from virtually every nation at this tournament have roots there. Bosnian supporters who have followed their team for decades, Italian communities who remember 1994, Senegalese families who came to Canada precisely because Canada was the kind of country that allowed them to come, Iranian diaspora who cannot attend their team's matches in Los Angeles but can attend them if those matches were held in Toronto, Moroccan communities who watched their country reach a World Cup semifinal in 2022 and whose children are now growing up in a city hosting the game their parents love.
Canada Soccer House opened on the 11th of June in both Toronto and North Vancouver. Free entry, no ticket required. Doors open for the first match of the tournament, Mexico against South Africa, so that the communities of Toronto can watch together for free in a space designed around belonging. The Director of Community and Sport Inclusion at Canada Soccer put it plainly in the announcement. She said Canada Soccer House is about belonging, celebrating, and creating memorable experiences through the power of football. She said whether fans come to watch matches, meet players, connect with fellow supporters, or simply enjoy the atmosphere with family and friends, everyone is welcome. That final phrase, "everyone is welcome," is not a slogan in Toronto. It is a description of the city's actual character.
Toronto's Fan Festival runs at Fort York National Historic Site and the Bentway, a space beneath the city's elevated motorway that has been transformed into a public venue of genuine cultural ambition. It runs from the 10th of June to the 19th of July, the full tournament, free for the public. The theme the city chose for its World Cup is 4 words that require no translation to anyone who has spent time there: the world in a city. That is what Toronto is, not as an aspiration, as a geographical fact. The transport infrastructure around the host venues in Toronto has been planned and communicated clearly and in advance. Supporters can reserve spots at Canada Soccer House to guarantee access on busy days. The process is simple and publicly available. The immigration process for entering Canada was communicated through official channels with clarity and warmth. Documents needed, timelines, advice to apply early. The government's own messaging was direct and human. Canada is excited to be hosting. Visitors are encouraged to apply early. Here is what you need. Here is what to expect. You are welcome. That last phrase again, you are welcome. 2 words, the most important words any host can say to a visitor, and the most significant difference between the experience of arriving at a World Cup in Canada and the experience of arriving at a World Cup in the United States has been the confidence with which those 2 words can be said, and the confidence with which the person hearing them can believe they are true. Vancouver adds its own dimension. A stadium that sits in one of the most visually extraordinary urban settings in the world. Mountains rising directly behind the city, the Pacific on one side, a compact downtown on the other. A ground that holds just over 54,000 people and that will be full for every match, including both of Canada's games in the city. The intimacy of that venue, the density of 54,000 people in a space that doesn't dilute them across 100,000 seats, is something that the great stadium hosting American cities, for all their infrastructure, cannot always replicate. Noise fills differently in a smaller space. Atmosphere concentrates. And when Canada supporters are in that stadium, the atmosphere will be unlike anything those players have experienced before at international level. Canada arrive at this tournament on a run of form that their federation and their supporters have waited a very long time to see. 7 games unbeaten before the opening match. Jonathan David, the most prolific striker in Ligue 1 in recent seasons. Alphonso Davies, whose recovery from injury has been one of the most closely watched stories of the preparation period. Ismail Kone, described by the manager as an X-factor. A squad assembled from clubs across Europe, from Bayern Munich to Lille to Arsenal to Juventus, representing the full scale of what Canadian football's international generation has become. And all of it playing at home, in front of a country that has been building toward this for 20 years and is finally, visibly ready. Mexico's contribution to the tournament has a different character, but no less significance, and it runs deeper than football. Because Mexico's most extraordinary act in this World Cup was not on a pitch, it was on a border. When the conditions surrounding Iran's participation in the United States became impossible to manage through normal planning, when a qualified nation found itself unable to stay in the primary host country, unable to trust the visa process for its officials, navigating a military conflict with the host nation that no sporting calendar was built to accommodate, Mexico did something simple and something important. It said yes, without conditions, without drama, without extracting anything in return.
The governor of Baja California opened the doors of Tijuana to Iran's national team and said her state was ready to receive them as if they were at home. The president of Mexico confirmed the arrangement when asked about it and said her country maintains relations with every nation in the world. The Iranian ambassador invoked a Persian proverb about friendship revealing itself in difficult moments. He was addressing Mexico when he said it. Iran's players arrived in Tijuana on the 7th of June. Fans waved to them as their convoy entered the training complex. They are sleeping in Mexico. They will cross the border on match days, play their football, and return south. It is an arrangement that no one planned for and that the governing body never designed a protocol to manage. It works because Mexico decided it would work and made it so. Then, the day before the tournament opened, something else emerged about Iran that made Mexico's hospitality even more significant. The Iranian Football Federation claimed that FIFA had revoked its entire ticket allocation for its 3 group stage matches in the United States. Every federation at a World Cup is entitled to receive and distribute 8% of stadium capacity for each of its games. For Iran, that amounts to several thousand tickets per fixture. Those tickets are the mechanism by which a nation's most loyal supporters, the diaspora in the host country and beyond, the people who follow their team home and away across years of commitment, get to be present when their country plays. The Federation said that allocation had been withdrawn, that it was now unable to offer even a single ticket to national team supporters, not one ticket for 3 matches. FIFA did not immediately confirm or deny the claim publicly. The governing body that said it was not involved in host country immigration processes, the same organization that watched its own selected referee spend 11 hours in an airport corridor before being deported, now faced an allegation that it had removed a qualified nation's supporter ticket rights days before their first match. Iran cannot offer its supporters tickets. Its officials cannot get visas. Its team sleeps in another country. And the governing body's public position is that a host government ultimately determines who is admitted.
Ian Wright found out and posted a video that was shared hundreds of thousands of times within hours. He said every few hours it's another story. Fans denied, players denied, officials denied, journalists denied, now refs. He said he was laughing, but it wasn't funny. He said something had to be said. He called it a World Cup of chaos. He asked, is this how the hosts behave for the greatest tournament in the world? He said he felt most for the American fans who were desperate for this and how embarrassed they must be. That last sentence is worth sitting with. Ian Wright, a man who has spent his life in football, who loves the game and all of it means, said he felt most for the American fans who were desperate for this. Not for FIFA, not for the institutions, for the supporters. The people in the United States who love football, who have waited for this, who wanted their country to host the world's game and be proud of how it was done. How embarrassed they must be. He wasn't speaking to them in anger, he was speaking on their behalf. Because the contrast between what Canada and Mexico have been able to offer and what has surrounded the American portion of this tournament is not about the size of the stadiums or the number of matches. It is about the quality of the welcome. And the welcome is the thing that matters most. The Azteca held the opening ceremony with Shakira and Burna Boy and Mana and tens of thousands of people who didn't need the World Cup to tell them to love football. They already did. The Zocalo opened its doors free for 39 days because Mexico City understood that a World Cup doesn't belong in a corporate zone behind a ticketing system. It belongs in the streets. Toronto's Fan Festival runs at a national historic site, because Canada understood that hosting the world means giving the world somewhere to gather that reflects what the city actually is. Meanwhile, the Fan Festival that was supposed to run for the full tournament at Liberty State Park in New Jersey, the state hosting the final, was canceled. The Fan Campus in Seattle was reduced from 74 acres to 4 smaller locations. 350,000 tickets for matches in Dallas were still unsold at the point the city council received its briefing. An England warm-up match in Tampa drew 13,000 supporters to a 69,000-seat stadium,
And Omar Artan spent 11 hours being questioned about al-Shabaab and was put on a flight home. Think about what it means for the people of Somalia that this happened. Not just for Artan as an individual, though what happened to him personally is something that deserves to be felt clearly and held with the full weight it carries, but for the young Somali referees who watched him become the first from their country to reach a continental final, who followed his career and understood what his selection for this World Cup meant. He was not just an official, he was proof that the path exists, that a Somali referee, working with dedication and skill through the years, can reach the World Cup. And then the path was closed at an airport in Miami, after 11 hours in a corridor, for reasons that were never explained, and he went home. What does that tell those young referees about the World Cup they have been dreaming of? What do you remember about the World Cups that felt most like celebrations of the game? France in 1998, South Africa in 2010, Japan and Korea in 2002. The moments that made those tournaments unforgettable were not only the goals, they were the faces in the crowds, the supporters from every corner of the world in the same city at the same time, the sense that this competition genuinely belonged to everyone, that the invitation was real, that when the World Cup said everyone is welcome, it meant it. Canada means it. Toronto means it. Vancouver means it. In every piece of communication, in every operational decision, in the warmth with which the question of how to enter the country is answered, the welcome is genuine, and it is consistent, and it costs the visitor nothing but the journey to get there. Mexico means it. In the opening ceremony at the Azteca, in the Zocalo Fan Festival free for 39 days, in the decision to open Tijuana's doors to a team at war with the primary host country and say simply, "You are welcome here, we have no problem with that." That is the contrast that has defined this tournament before the football has even begun, and it is a contrast that Omar Artan understands better than anyone. He had the right papers, he had the right visa, he was Africa's referee of the year, and he spent 11 hours being questioned about a terrorist organization before being put on a plane home. Not to Canada, not to Mexico, to Istanbul. There is still football to be played. The matches begin today. Whatever surrounds this tournament, the football will be real and extraordinary and indifferent to institutional failure. Players of genuine quality will perform at this level and produce the kind of moments that outlast everything. And in Toronto and Vancouver and Mexico City and Guadalajara and Monterrey, the experience of being at this World Cup will be what it was always supposed to be: warm, accessible, and alive with the particular joy of football being played at its highest level in cities that are genuinely, unconditionally ready for the world. But Omar Artan is in Istanbul, and Iran supporters cannot get a single ticket to watch their team, and Ian Wright posted a video because someone had to say it. And the question that hangs over the primary host of this tournament, the question that American football supporters who are desperate for this, who are embarrassed by what has surrounded it, who wanted their country to show the world what it means to host the game, that question is still being answered. Every few hours, another story.